Welcome back to part 3 of this tutorial. This should be our last part today. We're just going to go in and lighten things up where we need it and darken things up, and then I might go in with my touch-up texture and titanium white to put in the brightest highlights. I really like how this is turning out so far, but I definitely feel like we need to darken a couple areas up and lighten a couple areas up just so we could get a little bit more contrast in there. And I will have everything linked in the description down below. I'll also have part 1 and part 2 if you want to follow along. And we're just going to jump into it. So I'm going to start with the 242, and this is our Primrose. And I'm just going to start blending in some of these areas here. Now I may not blend out this layer with my odorless mineral spirits. Just depends how smoothly these start blending. So I'm just looking at my reference photo. I'm just picking out some areas that need to be a little bit brighter. And I'm sort of going in with this color because this is a very, very light, like whitish yellow color. So it's just got a hint of yellow in there. And I'm also going to take this color and just sort of start blending out some of these dark areas. Just a little bit, like where it needs to be just a little bit lighter. That's going to help with our contrast a little bit. Okay, I'm going to go in with my white Prismacolor pencil, and I'm just going to start putting this just underneath where our dark shadows are, and that's going to help them pop a little bit. And then if I feel I need more, that's when I can go in with that touch-up texture and titanium white. Now I might just go ahead and sharpen this pencil up because I feel like I need it to be a little bit sharper. Okay, so I have a much sharper point on that now, and I'll be able to go in and get a little bit more precise, brighter areas. And I'm going to go in the middle area here. And just really make that stand out in a couple of areas. And I'm going to go back in with that primrose color and just blend out the sides here a little bit, where they just need to be toned down just slightly. And I'm going to go in with the yellow ochre, and I'm just going to touch up in our shadow areas a little bit. Because I find I don't need to make them any darker. I just want to blend them out a little bit better. So on the top part, the shadow areas are more towards the top, and on the bottom here, they're more towards the bottom. So that's where I'm focusing this. And I am pushing just a little bit harder. I would say a good like medium to hard pressure, just to really get it to blend well. And I'm just going to glaze a little bit here where I want it just a little bit more yellow. And then down here towards this bottom shadow, I'm going to start putting this color in. And just a tiny bit up here. And I'm just pushing very lightly here. I'm just seeing where I need to adjust my colors if I do. So under where I put those highlights, I'm going in. Okay. Now I'm going to go in with that sepia pencil. That's the 407. And I'm going to start laying that down here for our shadow. I'm just going to bring it up just a little bit. And again with the 034. Now I may blend out just the shadow area here a little bit, but we'll see at the end. Okay, so now we're going to move down to our purple. And I'm going to use just a hint of this sepia down here, just to help darken up this shadow a little bit. And I'm just putting it just on the very top edge of our purple cookie. And that'll help because the shadow from this one is on this one, so the same colors should be sort of going on both. Okay. Then I'm going to take the 120 and I'm going to sort of blend these two together. And again, I'm looking at my reference photo, trying to see, you know, how far those shadows come out. And if it goes a little bit further, that's fine. It'll just add to the dimension. And I'm also going to take this color and punch up some of the shadow areas in here because there's not enough contrast in here. So I'll make the shadows a little bit darker, make the brights a little bit brighter, and that will definitely help with our, you know, cookie texture feel. So again, I'm looking, it looks like the shadows are towards the top part of this cookie, so that's what I'm gonna do. I'm really gonna focus them in there. And I'm sort of, you know, trying to be a little bit random, like I'm moving the pencil a little bit more random, because that's really going to help give you some texture in food if you're drawing, you know, cakes or cookies, because you don't want your edges to be too smooth in the textured spots. So you'll see me do like sort of like these little edges here, so everything's not like, it's not a nice smooth area that I'm coloring in, because that's really going to help too. So I'm making sure I'm doing like little jagged motions. And sometimes I do it fairly quickly so it doesn't look like that's what I'm doing, but that's what I'm doing. And I'll also add little, you know, random spots in there just for some extra texture. Because this purple one especially has a lot of like different little spots going on. Now you don't have to have them all perfect in the same areas, but we want, you know, a good interpretation of them. So I'm going to take that same, the 120 that we're using, and I'm going to start laying this down here. And I'm going to focus it sort of more on the top half of our shadow. And I apologize for the cat. Every time I'm filming, he decides that he should be having attention. Okay. So now I'm going to go back in with our white, and I'm just going to add some highlights in here. So I'm just, you know, doing like sort of those little random motions again. And I'm looking to where those lightest areas are, and they're mostly like right under where we've put our shadowed areas in. And I don't want it to be, you know, too much of a difference, just enough. Okay, and just because I want a little bit of a lighter area here, I'm just going to glaze this over here, just to start creating sort of like a slight subtle highlight. But I don't want to cover up the color completely. And I'm going to do the same thing down here, because there's sort of more of a highlight on this area of it. And I'm just lightly doing this. I'm hardly, you know, putting any pressure really. I'm just letting the pencil graze over the paper. And that's just going to add a little bit of dimension there. And I may blend out some of that, or I may just leave it depending how I like it after. Okay. And I am going to take just a hint of this 159. It's a nice dark blue shadow, and I'm just, again, going to use that to help darken up just a couple of spots in here. And again, it's more towards the top of these shadows and more towards the bottom of these shadows. And I'm just really looking at that photo, just seeing which ones, you know, have the darkest shadows, because the blue and the purple will go together really well. And as you can see, these last finishing touches, like this last stage, goes pretty quickly because we have all the information down on the paper. We have, you know, our basic, where our colors are. It's just, I find this is the fun stage because we get to go in and sort of adjust things and see where we want, you know, things to be a little bit different. You can glaze colors over. It's a really fun stage. Okay, so I'm going to take this same blue and just go towards the bottom of this shadow here. And I'm going to take it over top of this one as well. Okay. And again, I'm just going to keep with this same pencil, and I'm going to start working on some of the shadows in here. And again, just making those random little jagged patterns. Trying my best to keep it as random as possible. And again, I'll add, you know, just some extra little stuff here and there. I may have to stop this to let the cat out, but I know as soon as I let him out, he's going to want right back in, so. He can't decide what he wants sometimes. So every time you see me pause, I'm just really giving a good look at that reference photo. Just, you know, so I'm making sure that I'm putting marks in places that they need to be. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. We just want a feel for it. Okay. So I'm going to take the 162 and I'm going to transition from this dark area with this. Now you'll notice with most of our shadows, they sort of take on like this rounded edge slightly. So I'm trying to get that feel in there as well. And I'm going to take this one down here. Now this one doesn't have too much of a shadow, but as I blend it down, it'll get rid of some of it. So sometimes I like to make my shadows just a little bit bigger than when they are, and then when I blend them down, it sort of pushes the pigment down a bit. And then I'm just gonna, you know, fill in any other of the crack areas with this color. Just making sure we have some really nice contrast in there. And then I'm just gonna lightly glaze around the edges in here. Just a little bit. And I'm gonna take that 002 and I'm gonna blend in here again really well. Now I'm pushing a little bit hard in here, sort of starting to burnish the area. I probably won't blend out in here, but I want it to be nice and blended. And then I'm going to take this color instead of our white and start going around some of our little highlight areas in here. And I'm also being, you know, pretty random with this, because I just want to lighten up the area a little bit. Now, one thing I will note, like I'll let you know, that I noticed while doing the watercolor underlayer, these pencils, if we just did the pencils, like let's say we didn't put the watercolor down first and we just put the pencils on, they wouldn't have darkened up so quickly. I find with that base watercolor layer, they really got dark and punchy fast. So maybe the next time I do that, I might even just try focusing on just the shadows and using the watercolor for the lights or the midtones and see how that looks. Because I think that might be a really cool look too. So we might do a tutorial doing that. And then I'm just going to take the same color and sort of glaze over like I did here, just anywhere I feel like it needs to be just a little bit lighter. And just to start help transitioning from that shadow there. And since I have this color available, I'm going to use it instead of using the white. If you don't have this color, you could certainly use the white. Okay. So I like how that is. Yeah, so we might try that, doing the watercolor paste and just going in and focusing on our shadows. And then we won't have to do so much adjusting after. That might be a neat idea. Okay. So I'm going to take this blue again, the 162, and just ever so lightly put it on top of our pink here again, so we're sort of transitioning our colors together. Because the reflection from the blue would be on this a little bit and affect the color down there a little bit. And then I'm going to take, I think I'll take this, the 095, and I'll use that to pull out this color even more. And I'm going to put a hint of the 599 in there as well, just to really help warm up that shadow. And I'm just doing like a light layer there. Okay, so we're going to use this one, the 599, and we're going to go in and start darkening up some of the shadows in here. And again, just those random little marks. Okay. Now I'm going to go in with the 129 and just darken up, or sort of layer, just to have a little bit of difference in the depth in just a couple areas here, because there's not too many like stark dark shadows in this one. So I'm just trying to pick out a couple of spots where I feel like there does need to be a little bit of a difference. Okay, and now I'm going to go back in with that white, and I'm just going to go over any last areas here where I really want to stay light. And then again, I'm going to take this pencil and just sort of brighten up just around our shadows a little bit, making some random texture marks. And that's just going to help. I like to do some dots. I like to do some little squiggly lines. And I'm just being careful not to go over the shadow areas, but I'm trying to go right up to the edges, because there's sort of like a little highlight just around all of the little edges. And again, I'm just gonna get in just a little extra brightness right here and just right down here. Okay. So I'm going to go back to that 599. And I'm going to use this for our highlight just on the bottom, our shadow just on the bottom here. Just a tiny bit. And then I'm going to take, I'm going to go in with that 095. And I'm going to start doing the same thing I did with the shadow down here. So I'm going to put this just under the base of our macaroon, but not out towards the edges. And that way there's just a hint of dimension, a hint of color in there. But it's not going to be terribly noticeable. And then I'm going to take the 508 and just go over all of that and take it out to the edges. So as we blend, I can blend it out nicely. Now I'm just taking it up to the edge of where I had it before, because as we blend, I can start to pull it out again and make sort of that lighter transition area. And now, because this is one of our darker shadows, I am going to take just a hint of my black, the 009, just under the edge of our cookie, because I really want there to be, you know, some depth in there. But I don't want the black to pull out too much and overpower. I'm going to go and just lay a little bit more of the Payne's Gray. Okay. Now I'm going to get rid of any sort of like little pencil dust that have gotten in there. And I'm just going to blend out a couple of areas one last time, mostly our dark shadows. And then I'll go in with the touch-up texture and do our brightest highlights, and then I think we'll be done. So for this, you've noticed I dip it in and then I try to get as much off on the paper towel as I can. Because this is our second layer, the colored pencil would blend out even better because there's already so much on there. So you want to make sure you have a lot less OMS. And I might even need to take even more off. We'll see as we start blending. If you have too much of the OMS on your brush, you can just end up lifting the color up instead of just blending it out. And again, I'm just blending from light to dark, working my way down, and I'm doing sort of little small circular motions. And I might, I think I'll speed up this part just because you've seen me blend it out in the other parts. And I'm just going to do the exact same thing, dip it in, dip it off, and then blend out, and then I'll come back. Okay, so I am going to be using the Touch-Up Texture and Titanium White from Brush and Pencil. As far as I know, this is the only opaque white that is archival that can go over top of colored pencils. I've just mixed it up over here on the side. Now I do have a video showing exactly how I do this, so I will try to link that down below. But I'm just going to add some highlights here and there to this. And this is nice and opaque, so it will really bring out some of these highlight areas. And I'm just going to do little dots and little squiggles where I feel like it needs it. And you sort of have to work fairly quickly with this stuff because it does dry. So I would recommend not to mix up a whole big batch of it, because if you're not used to it, it may end up drying before you're done with it. So you can see I'm just doing little dots, and if you find it's too much, you can kind of go over. Now I don't recommend putting your finger on your artwork, but you can always sort of like tap it out just a little bit. And I'm probably going to start speeding this up here too. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and let that dry. And the nice thing about this is if you find that your highlights are a little too bright and it doesn't look weird, once this is dry, and I would give it a good 15-20 minutes to dry, you can glaze over top of it with a colored pencil as well to tone it down just a little bit. So we'll go ahead and let this dry and see how it looks. Okay, so now that that Touch-Up Texture and Titanium White is dry, you can see how it looks. It sort of settles down a little bit. But I've brought a couple colored pencils over here. If you like how this looks, you can leave it. And if you don't have the Touch-Up Texture and Titanium White, feel free to use, you know, a gel pen or a paint marker or whatever that you have on hand if you want that effect. and if you don't care that it's archival or not. But I'm just going to take the same lightest colors that we used for this, and I'm just going to lightly glaze over top of it. So I'm starting with the 242, and it just sort of tones it down just a little bit. So I'm probably just going to speed this up, and then I'll show you what it looks like at the end. There, so I quite like how our macaroons have turned out, and I think that's how I'm going to leave it. Another thing I will say, when you're glazing over top of the touch-up texture in titanium white, it is a glaze. Like, it is a very, like, I hold the pencil back and I'm sort of like just glazing over it very lightly. You don't want to be pushing too hard, and it's just, you know, glazing over top of it over and over. That's going to put the color down. If you push too hard, you could chip off some of the touch-up texture in titanium white. If that happens, it's fine. You can always reapply it again over top. But that's what I like to do, and it just sort of tones it down a little bit. So I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please subscribe, give a thumbs up to the video, hit the notification bell so you'll know when I post my tutorials. I'm going to try to start posting every, I think, Monday and Thursday. So those videos should go out then, and then I'll have other videos go out here and there when I do them. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, I will see you in the next video.